never thought about it. I had friends who died that day.
What are you drawing now?
Friends, family, community is the most important thing.
Welcome to AfterMath, 9/11 stories of hope and resilience. I'm Beth Feehan. September 11 changed my family forever. My father-in-law, FDNY First Deputy Commissioner William Feehan, gave 42 years to this department and lost his life that morning. The story of September 11th did not end on that day. AfterMath exists to tell the stories that came after, from FDNY families, first responders, and the civilians whose lives that day never stopped shaping.
I'm Harvey Wang, a lifelong New Yorker and photographer, but today I'm here as an old friend. AlanKaufman and I have known each other since middle school days in Queens. We've been in and out of each other's lives for decades. And for the past year, I've witnessed Alan battle with stage 4 cancer. We're here to capture his story, familiar to all New Yorkers, full of passion, rebuilding after loss, and reinventing in the most unexpected ways. Alan, you've been a source of strength and inspiration to your friends like me. Thank you for being here and sharing your story.
Thank you. It's still impacting people's lives in ways we never could have imagined them. Every day. It's not just mine, my friends, my children, those of us who have yet to even discover the impact what it's going to be. Well, I never thought about it. I had friends who died that day. And so, whatever I might feel, or, whether psychologically it would bother me, or I'd listen to the ads on the radio about, the World Trade Center Health Fund. I never thought I didn't deserve to be paid attention to. I was still alive. But then it was only recently I came to discover how many of my colleagues and others from that day had quietly been suffering, either with cancer, lung diseases, other problems, or their kids. I just found out a few weeks ago, a friend of mine who had moved his family to Princeton a few weeks before the disaster, that his son, who's older than my son, after they moved, he went to Princeton High School, and close to 50% of his fellow students either lost one or both parents in the accident, and the psychological issues that he has to deal with today, 25 years later, and the psychological issues that his grandchildren are going to have to deal with. It doesn't stop. It's a gift that keeps on giving. And most of us are too embarrassed to talk about it or bring it up, because again, we didn't die that day. So, and it's one of those things we need to talk about more, bring it out into the open, because that's what takes away its power, not make believe that nothing happened.
Absolutely. I want to pass the mic to Harvey, who's known you a lot longer, since before Simon and Garfunkel were singing about the Queen of Corona. Two guys from Queens. So Harvey.
Alan, you don't have to try to talk loud. The mics are picking you up, so don't stress yourself here. Your life, like a great novel, has many chapters. So let's talk about your first chapter in business. How did a kid from Southeast Queens end up in finance, managing millions of dollars?
Well, I'd always been attracted to finance. My grandmother had been very active, involved in trading stocks. My uncle became very successful as a stock manager and made a lot of money 60s called the New York Mercantile Exchange, where oil was traded. It was all brand new. And almost all the kids that ended up there were, scrappers, ne'er-do-wells, ethnic origin, Italian, Jewish, Polish. And it was a place where, literally, with a few $1,000, a lot of ambition, a lot of stupidity, you could make it. And so I followed other kids in that same path in the belief that I could do it. And so it just sort of went from there. I was going to be a trader. I was going to be the next great Diamond Jim Brady. I'll never forget the first time I got a Porsche. How excited I was to come back to Rosedale in my Porsche and show it off to everybody. I remember when I just got it that day. I came home and I went to pick you up, and you got in the car and you go, "Wow, you could buy a house for this much money." And I was like, "Yep." And that to me was, I had arrived, I made it. It was all about just the drive to live that dream, to become that dream. As time went on, I chose some other colors, tried to paint myself as more sophisticated, more into it. Maybe I did better than some other guys, maybe not as well. But it was all just part of this game to make it at all costs. The investment management business is a hard one to explain to people. Normally when you're in investing at all, everyone goes, "Oh, you're a broker." I wasn't a broker. I didn't buy and sell stocks to mom and pops. And I know there's some disdain in my voice because I was the low end of the totem pole. I ultimately went on. I started my own company. And then I partnered with other companies to manage money for, at first, very, very wealthy individuals. Very wealthy individuals. And then started managing money for corporations like Kodak, General Motors, big names that you would know. At our peak, we managed, I think it was close to $1 billion. And this was in the 70s, 80s. So we tried to climb the tiers of legitimacy in what we did. I remember I was nominated to Institutional Investor as one of the 40 under 40. So, hot shits to watch on Wall Street. Didn't mean crap, but to me it meant everything. And so there was sort of in my mind this unwritten or unspoken sort of game plan of how you progressed. There were people at the end of the day who did a lot better than I did. I wasn't kingship by any stretch of the imagination, but I was in Rosedale.
And then you walked away from it all to grow mushrooms.
Yeah.
Rare varieties that chefs in New York couldn't find elsewhere. What came first, the desire to leave the finance behind, or desire to be immersed in something that you can get dirty, get your hands dirty?
Well, at the end of the day, I was a kid that grew up in Rosedale. The things I loved the most as a kid and later in life were taking apart a car engine with my dad and putting it back together. I loved real work. When 9/11 happened, it had a profound impact on me that I never would have anticipated. It kind of fucked me up. It rewrote my brain. And I remember saying to people often who would ask me this question, I never was as happy making money for people as I was when I fed them. There was something tangible. There was a human connection. When I would bring Chef some great mushrooms relationship fed me in a way that didn't before. And along the way, I was bored of growing mushrooms. I was helping poor people in Africa and Southeast Asia learn how to grow mushrooms. Anyone could do it. You could do it on garbage. And it was changing people's lives in positive ways. And I guess I just realized that worrying about myself, making a lot of money, taking care of myself, it just didn't do it for me anymore. And of course I knew everyone was going to think I was out of my mind to stop making a lot of money and making nothing. But it's what I wanted to do. And so I threw it away. And that had its own set of consequences. A lot of people who thought I was brilliant didn't think I was so smart anymore.
And even with doing something you loved, you had some setbacks. Speaking about health setbacks, you developed a respiratory condition, which possibly originated from the mushroom spores. And then how did you let go of that, something that you loved so much? And do you have advice for people who might be faced with similar?
It was hard. I mean, I wasn't just letting go of that. It changed my life in many ways. I mean, my wife, my family, they had signed on for a different kind of lifestyle. They weren't too excited about going from living in a big house, being able to travel, being able to do whatever they wanted, to being able to barely get by. So I had some disagreements to deal with. And then, as you said, my health really went downhill. And for a while, no one could figure out what it was. They thought it was cancer. They told me if I didn't quit, I would die. And so I went through a lot of financial difficulties. I mean, I was homeless. I went from doing well to sleeping in my car at a gas station. People have a hard time understanding that. It's hard to explain to people that you would make that choice. So the only conclusion they can come to is there's clearly something wrong with you. And that was the conclusion they came to.
Aftermath is grateful to be brought to you by its sponsors. When we come back, Alan shares where he was on 9/11. This is Aftermath. Welcome back to Aftermath, 9/11 Stories of Hope and Resilience. I'm Harvey Wang, joined by my co-host Beth Feehan and my old friend Alan, a kid from Queens, a former trader, a mushroom farmer, and a dear friend, one of the most alive people I know. Alan, I want to switch gears and ask you about September 11th. Where were you, and what do you remember?
We were about to launch the contract, the culmination of the work and the investment. And so I've been spending a lot of time down at the exchange, the site of 9/11. If I remember correctly, it was the North Tower. And we were preparing for a breakfast meeting with a lot of the floor traders to begin to introduce them. And I had dinner with my wife at the hotel room, which restaurant it was, but she was going to go back in the car to Princeton. She was pregnant at the time with our first child, my third. And we had dinner. I said goodbye to her, and I was staying over in the hotel there at the North Tower. I said goodbye to her as she went off, and I went up to my room, and it was already late, but it got later, and I decided, you know what, I want to be with her instead of here. I'll just take a car down to Princeton, make arrangements for them to pick me up early, and get me back here for the breakfast meeting. And so that's what I went with. I called and told her that I'd be coming back down, and I fell asleep, and I didn't wake up. Oh, no, I did wake up. I'm sorry. I made the decision to go back down. The car came. Car got me. I was going to head back down there and have a car wake me up and come back up to New York. So I did that. slept. And so it must have been 7 or 8 in the morning, I don't remember exactly. But the office it already happened. And so my office was frantically calling my wife, trying to find out where the hell I was. They finally got a hold. I pick up the phone, and I'm like, what? They're like, where the fuck are you? You're supposed to be at the breakfast, and the tower's been hit. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then it's just a blur. I had the phone, I went to turn on the TV. I saw the plane had hit. I tried getting dressed, tried grabbing my stuff, because I was still going in for the breakfast no matter what. And woke up enough to realize what was going on. I turned on the TV, I couldn't understand it. I'm in Princeton, and windows on the world is gone. Even today I have a hard time processing what was going on, or why, or anything. I don't understand.
Alan, for a lot of people who were downtown in those weeks, the connection between that exposure and what came later took years to become clear. When did you first start to understand that what you'd breathed down there might be connected to what was happening to your health today?
Just as an aside, I had just dropped my eldest son off to start school at NYU a few days before. So I was frantically trying to get him out of there. My second son was working occasionally on the floor, and I was trying to figure out what to do with him. And then I didn't think about connection. It took a couple of days before I realized I had to go down there, both to help. I had a lot of friends whose livelihoods were tied to the exchange, colleagues. They need help. And so I figured I had to go down there and help them. And it was, what they did helped me, what I did helped them. It was a family in an odd sort of way. And so I made arrangements to go down there. You couldn't really get down there. You had to stop at the guard station or whatever the hell it was, and walk a long way. And one of the most vivid memories of my life was walking down there and getting through. And I came to this spot, which was the front page from Time or Newsweek, a part of the building embedded into the sidewalk or whatever, with the smoke coming up around it, and the fire, and what do you say, what do you feel at a moment like this? There's this piece of history that you just saw the day before on the front cover of a magazine, Simon Garfunkel, and the smoke, it smelled like, I'll never forget this, it smelled like the biggest barbecue you've ever been to. It was unmistakable, the smell of burning flesh. And you just keep on walking, and you go in, you do what you have to do, you leave, and you go home. And, there was no loudspeaker, there was no one there, but you'd ask everybody, is this okay? Is it safe to be here? Yeah, it's safe, just go do what you have to do, stay away from this and this. And it's like, okay, I guess it's safe. And then you start to laugh with each other, and you find ways. All the bars and shit were closed, but we still found ways to have a drink together or turn into a social event.
Alan, you were diagnosed with stage 4 small cell lung cancer in July 2025. And by the end of the year, you were on the World Trade Center health program? Okay. Walk me through how that happened, from the first MRI to that moment of clarity.
Again, even as late as July, when I was starting to develop symptoms, I didn't really equate it. But as I started talking about what was going on, I would talk to some very close friends, and it was really only then that they're like, "You're an idiot. Sign up." And my people, I was like, "What are you talking about? You were there." And then one friend's like, "Yeah, and I have cancer." I was like, "What?" when he was first diagnosed, he was doing much better than I am. And I remember talking to him the first couple of meetings, just how do you process this, that you have cancer? I mean, he was out playing golf. He was doing fine. And then he went from that, literally 6 weeks ago, to now he's dead. And now there's probably a couple of dozen friends and people I know who are in that point of life. I mean, you look at me today, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks, 6 weeks ago, I was still shopping for food. I didn't feel great, but I was okay. It went from that to, and you can't comprehend it.
Let me ask you a question. The system doesn't make this easy, right? The bureaucracy of this, insurance approvals, government programs, procedures that take months. What has that been like in a nutshell, on top of everything else?
It's been tough. You think you've got things under control. And then I want to find a few weeks later that, no, you didn't have any idea. I mean, I think I've had extraordinary care from some truly extraordinary people. But the reality is the way the system is set up. It's not easy. When I was doing better than I am today, and my cancer was of great interest for research programs, everything was taken care of. I didn't have to pay for anything. No one gave me a hard time. Now it's like, if there isn't some drug company that's going to reimburse for all of this, they've got no interest. If it's interesting to a drug company, well then I can assure you, you wouldn't believe how nice it is. And listen, I understand that's the way the world works, but isn't there a shock every time you're confronted once again with, all right, kids can have a place to live or something to eat, or do I go for this treatment? And it's been a challenge.
Alan, you and I have been through a lot together. Our lives have intersected at various points. When your second marriage broke up, when you were broke, when you were living out of your car, you found your way back. What do you draw on now?
Friends, family, community is the most important thing you'll ever find in this life. It's a hard lesson to have to learn again at 7 years old. But it's reality.
So what does, we titled this podcast Aftermath. What does that mean to you sitting here? It's very personal, isn't it?
Don't ever forget that. The family and friends I've spent most of the past 6 months. I've learned that trying to connect my children to people like Harvey, like you, telling them that story so they will know there was something good and special that came out of this.
Alan, you introduced me to Gordon at one point. You're a PR man.
Yes.
You opened doors for me when I was young. You supported me as an artist. You purchased my books. You were always generous in that way. Who do you want people to know you as?
I'd much rather they remember that than the guy on the floor with the Porsche.
I recall that Cat Stevens was the soundtrack of our high school years. And in the song Father and Son, he sings the line, "You may still be here tomorrow, but your dreams may not." What does that lyric mean to you after chasing so many dreams?
Be the person you can point to with pride, not the person that made $10 million. I want people to remember me for the others that I helped, much more than the money or the lifestyle or any of that crap. much rather someone on the street. If they're asked, did you ever know Alan? Then they remember something I did for them. That was good. That's what matters. Yeah.
Alan, thanks. Thank you for your bravery, your brilliance, your friendship.
I don't know how brave I was, Harvey.
I know we're ending right now, but I want to say an enduring image and memory I have of you is when we were in high school and you were at a gas station pumping gas for money. You were working when I was in la la land about like the real world, and you were always that kind of inspiration to me. Someone who managed in the real world to support yourself, to challenge yourself in whatever you undertook, whether it's pottery or mushroom growing. You always learned. You went as far as you could go as an artist, as a scientist. You're just a very admirable person. So thank you, and I'm grateful for our friendship. This is Harvey Wang.
And I just want to say thank you for agreeing to do this with us. It means so much to me to do this with both of you. I'm honored. Okay? So thank you. Thank you for listening to Aftermath, 9/11 Stories of Hope and Resilience. If you have a story to share, find us on Instagram at Aftermath Stories or email aftermathstories@bethecanman.studio. I'm Beth Feehan. See you next Sunday on WOR at 9 a.m.